Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, it is a pleasure to join you today in the Nelson Mandela Africa Hall here in Addis Ababa, a place that symbolizes both Africa's proud history and its boundless aspirations for the future. Africa stands at the threshold of a profound transformation. With the world's youngest and fastest growing population, rapid urbanization, and an explosion of innovation, the continent is poised to redefine its development trajectory. Yet the path towards achieving the Sustainable Development Goals remains steep. The Gates Foundation has long recognized both the urgency of Africa's challenges and the vast potential of its people. And I must also pay personal tribute to Bill himself for his unwavering belief in the power of science, innovation and partnerships to drive human progress, and for his deep and personal commitment to the future of Africa and its youth. This is more than philanthropy. It is long-term investment in dignity, in equity, and in shared progress. Yet we face an urgent reality. Across the continent, millions of children still die before their 5th birthday from preventable causes. Maternal mortality remains far too high. Too many families are trapped in cycles of poverty and exclusion. And still, I remain deeply hopeful, because Africa is not waiting to be lifted. It is rising. Over the next 25 years, Africa's youth, ingenuity and resilience will drive global innovation, from climate-smart agriculture to digital health and fintech solutions. The world should no longer ask how it can help Africa, but rather, how can it partner with Africa to drive global progress and achieve the 2063 Agenda? In closing, let us be clear about our mission: a world where every mother survives childbirth, every child thrives, and no one is left behind. With your continued partnership and with multilateralism our compass, we can turn this vision into a reality. Thank you.
A reality. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Are we on the African continent? I must have made a mistake. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Your Excellencies, dignitaries, distinguished guests, thank you for joining us today. Thank you so much to the Deputy Secretary General, Amina. Thank you for reminding us of the progress of the past quarter century, 25 years, and why we should be excited for the next 25 years as Africa continues to rise with so much progress. My name is Nomzamo Mbata, and I will have the very easy task today of being your host. Thank you for joining us at the Gates Foundation 25th anniversary. 25 years of progress. 25 years ago, I was 9 years old. Don't do the math. Do not do the math. And my greatest title back then was being my grandmother's favorite grandchild. I still think I hold that title. Don't ask the other grandchildren, of course. But 25 years has been spent observing, participating in the rise of this incredible continent. Thank you so much, because it is due in large part to every single one of you that is sitting in this room, to the 20,000 that is joining us virtually, and the many who are hosting watch parties. Today's event is being translated into 5 different languages. We don't want to leave anybody behind. And thank you so much to the young people who are joining us today as well, because we leave no one behind. To the Foundation's partners, whose insight and work continues to make progress possible. And to today's speakers, thank you in advance for your insightful ideas on how we can continue to move our incredible, dynamic, beautiful continent forward. In 25 years, the Gates Foundation has continued to partner with incredible progress with governments, universities, community-led organizations, civil servants, and so many more. Together, they have reduced childbirths, expanded access to healthcare, and lifted millions out of extreme poverty. The Foundation's work has continued to work at scale, including their partners, with millions of lives being impacted. But today, I'd like to share one of those lives. You see, when I was 14 years old, at 2 a.m. in the morning in Guamashu, Durban, South Africa, my grandmother and I were woken up by a knock at our door. As we opened the door, it was a distant relative that was 10 years old. And on her hip was an 8-month-old baby sister of hers. They had been escorted by the police to come to us for refuge. The 8-month-old was on death's doorstep. She was HIV positive. She had contracted the virus from her mother, who was now late. Now, my grandmother and I had no experience on how to care for an HIV positive, malnourished young infant. And with the help of the Department of the Social Development as well as the Department of Health in South Africa, we were directed to a hospital that had a center that cared for HIV positive parents, HIV positive children, and of course now, those who were about to become primary caregivers. I was put through, at the age of 14 years old, antiretroviral training program on how to administer 16 pills a day to her. Her viral load was through the roof. Her CD4 count was fighting for its life. And yet, with the help of my grandmother and myself, by the time she was 6, 7 years old, that viral load was undetectable. She had another chance at life. Now, she's in her early 20s and enjoys my credit card for the latest trends way too much. We later learned that that center was actually supported by this very foundation. And so as I stand here, it is a full circle moment to share with you all that it is never in vain, that progress truly is possible. And so today, it is not only about looking back at the progress that has already been done, but it's about looking forward with immense, immense positive outlook that this incredible continent is up to us to continue to build. Now, of course, we know that we are facing multiple challenges with the recent international aid that has been cut, with donor fatigue. These have real consequences on our continent. But as we sit here at Mandela Hall, in the heart of the African Union, I can only hope that we look forward to 25 more years of determined leadership, of steady commitment, that we can go even further. Two incredible women that could not join us in person today have sent through videos. The first will be from Dr. Ngozi Okonjo-Iweala, the Director General of the World Trade Organization, who is a champion for equitable global development. She previously served as the chair of the board of Gavi, the Vaccine Alliance, and made sure that low-income countries had equitable access to vaccines. She's also the former finance minister of Nigeria and a relentless advocate for economic forum, for trade equity, and for inclusive growth. The second extraordinary woman that we will hear from is Professor Senaid Fiseha. She is the vice president of the Susan T. Buffett Foundation, a globally respected voice of women's health. She is shaping reproductive health care and policy and expanding that access to women and girls, particularly on the African continent. Please, help me hear from these incredible women. Thank you.
Hello to friends across the continent. I'm truly sorry I can't be with you in person for this important conversation, but I'm honored to share a few words of encouragement, especially in light of Bill's incredible generosity and enduring commitment to Africa. We're living through a time of profound global change, economic uncertainty, shifting donor priorities, and rising debt burdens are placing real pressure on health and development efforts. But these headwinds shouldn't weaken our resolve. They should strengthen it. Africa has made extraordinary progress. Life expectancy in sub-Saharan Africa has risen from 52 years at the start of this century to 63 today. Under 5 mortality has more than halved. These are remarkable achievements made possible by the leadership of African governments and peoples, the resilience of strong partnerships with global allies. Philanthropy has played an important role in this journey. The Gates Foundation, along with other African foundations like the Aliko Dangote Foundation, has helped change. Gavi, which I'm very proud to have been chair for 5 years, has reached over 1 billion children with life-saving vaccines, preventing millions of deaths. This is what long-term commitment and global solidarity can achieve. Yet we know the work is far from done. Too many children still lack access to basic health services. Too many families face uncertainty about the future. The next chapter must be defined by renewed ambition and shared responsibility. We are seeing African countries work hard to rise to this challenge, to mobilize more domestic resources, embrace innovation, and shape their own health futures. Now is the time to double down, to do more, do better, to work harder with our partners, and to keep pushing forward. Let's stay the course, friends. Let's continue working together, believing in Africa's promise, and investing in its future. Thank you.
Driven by data, powered by technology, and grounded in the belief that every life has equal value, Bill, for 25 years, you and Melinda dared to do what many thought impossible. From northern Nigeria to Pakistan, you didn't just fund change, you walked alongside it. Through bold vision like eradicating polio, ensuring choice-based family planning reached millions of women around the world, and ending vaccine-preventable childhood illnesses, you've shown that change is possible, measurable. Congratulations on a legacy that has reshaped the world. Now more than ever, we look to you to lead again, bolder, braver, and more human than ever. Congratulations on your 25th year anniversary.
A legacy that has reshaped the world, renewed ambition, and opportunities that lie ahead. Ladies and gentlemen, for our first panel, I'm going to invite Dr. Victor Oladokun, who's going to speak more with our panelists on these opportunities that we have that lie ahead. Thank you. Please, Dr. Victor.
Many thanks, Nomzamo, and thank you very much for the very powerful story and lived experience you shared in your opening remarks. Truly, truly powerful, and that's what collaboration and partnership really is all about. Esteemed guests, partners, and champions of progress, welcome once again to the Nelson Mandela Hall here in the heart of Addis Ababa at the African Union headquarters, celebrating Gates at 25th anniversary. What an awesome day it is, and this is a packed hall, probably one of the largest audiences I've seen in this hall. To the close to 20,000 online registrants and more viewers actually joining us at 20 viewing centers all across the continent, we say thanks for joining us. But even more importantly, we have both in this hall and online and in the viewing centers, thousands of young Africans. To them, I'd like us this morning to reserve the louder applause. I know it was a little bit tame earlier when Nomzamo was introduced. Said, yeah, I think we can do better. Come on. There we go. Because the future is all about the youth. Today, we celebrate so many things, but we celebrate, more importantly, visionary leadership, transformative impact, and strategic partnerships that really are making a difference. We can't do it alone, but together we can do so much more. Our panel discussion this morning, ground truthing the moment, responses to a shifting global landscape, is a Pan-African conversation. And we're delighted to have with us three leaders, extraordinary leaders, who are making a difference in their field. And they shine the light on the power of innovative collaboration and partnership. So join me this morning, and let's, again, let them feel a round of applause. Introduce as they come, or welcome as they come on stage, Dr. Catherine Chuptunji, the Executive Director of the African Population and Health Research Center. She is, in her own right, a leading voice in evidence-based policymaking, and the important work that she does and her institution informs health and development strategies, data-driven solutions, and sustainable systems. Please welcome Dr. Catherine Chuptunji. Thanks for being with us. And Catherine is joined by a former Minister of Health from the country of Mali, Professor Samba Sow, who is a globally renowned epidemiologist. Professor Sow has driven groundbreaking vaccine research and delivery, and he is highly recognized for his work in primary, child, and maternal health. The leadership that he provides really is a showcase for how local expertise fuels global health impact. Please give Professor Samba Sow a warm welcome. And we're truly delighted to have with us an advisor to the African Union Chair on Youth, Gender, and Partnerships, Chido Mpemba, a remarkable young woman. She is an AU Youth Envoy and an advocate for gender equity and youth empowerment. As a recognized champion, she is a voice for the next generation's role in development. With that being said, my first question is going to come to Professor Samba Sow. Again, please give them a warm welcome.
Now, we've heard the details. We're seeing a major shift like never before in global development financing. In particular, cuts in ODA, changing donor priorities across the board. And then again, an expectation that countries can do much more with much less. Now, in the face of funding uncertainties and from where you're sitting, what is it that keeps you awake at night? And more importantly, what are you seeing on the ground, and how are governments and communities responding to these geopolitical shifts?
Thank you very much. And ladies and gentlemen, distinguished guests, good morning, and thank you all. And thank you, Mr. Victor, for this great question. What keeps me really awake overnight is not a lot. Few key things. One is when I think about these women trying to get a ride between two men on a motorbike, trying to reach to the next rural maternity in her community, and will deliver on that motorbike. And baby, of course, will fail and die there. That happened while I was there. Second, these women trying to just do normal delivery in the first primary health care, first rural maternity, going through the pain, labor, and still worrying about venomous snakes or scorpions around, or being in a room with broken delivery tables or muddy tables, no windows, no doors, broken roof. That's what kills me every day. Of course, the global health, the global funding shift is impacting and will continue to impact if we don't do something urgently on governments, communities, our national health system. Already stretched, primary healthcare system, fragmented, is collapsing. Communities used to be left behind, but they are even more left out, forgotten, never found. We need really solutions, urgent solutions. We need resilient, robust, community-centered approach. And we need to focus on equity. One of these great examples is today the REACH network that I co-chair with my brother, Honorable Minister Pate from Nigeria, and the maternal, neonatal, and child health package. I used to do this analogy, airplane mask. Imagine an airplane with a lot of children, some at business and some at economy. The airplane mask is only working in business class. Most children in economy don't have. There is no menu to choose from. And it is not an easy task. That's what makes me sleepless.
There's a massive sense of urgency here, which I'm gonna come to Catherine with my next question. Just very recently, a few months, on February 28th, you made the following statement. You said, "People will die, and we don't know because the programs to count the dead have been cut." Now, it's a powerful statement. It's a persuasive statement, but some might actually say it's a little bit far-fetched. How real is the situation, and what can we do as a continent, as countries, as a people, to ensure that this projection does not become our reality?
Thanks, Victor. I think you won't be surprised to learn that that was one quote from a one-hour interview in the New York Times. And this interview was about some of the ramifications of the cuts in funding and the impact it has on data systems. So Africa is known for many things, but strong data systems is not one of them. And I'll tell you that there are prevailing narratives about how the continent escaped unscathed from the COVID-19 pandemic, but this is not grounded in data. It's based on anecdotes and things like that. So it's the context that doesn't have very strong data systems, but that has had two pillars when it comes to health data. And the first pillar was the so-called demographic and health surveys, or DHS. Anybody in global development would know DHS. So the demographic and health surveys was technical assistance for that for many years, almost 40 years, was funded through a program that was funded by the US government through an initiative called Measure DHS. Demographic and health surveys are the data source for health data for countries because they're based on national surveys and they cover things like maternal mortality, infant mortality, and then of course coverage of key indicators. And I would tell you that the global development community is waiting with bated breath for the next DHS to come. The problem is that the DHS happens every 3 to 7 years. And it tells you what you did not get right, but it also tells you how you've done maybe over the last 15 years in terms of progress. So this mechanism, the technical assistance,
and what's the data saying? What's the data saying right now?
Great progress being made. The problem with this is that it tells you what you didn't get right. There's great progress, there are areas where there's no progress. And sometimes it tells you that Kenya is doing well. It does not tell you which part of Kenya is not doing well. It does not tell you where perhaps if you're to invest in this environment without enough resources, where to invest more and not just invest in Kenya. Should you invest in Western Kenya, Central Kenya or Northern Kenya? So that was part of the thing. So this system has been pulled. So it's not far-fetched to think that actually we might have people dying, but we don't know. First of all, because the system is retrospective, but also because this system has been disrupted. So what do we do moving forward? As I've said, DHS has been there for about 40 years, and DHS served its purpose, but DHS was not serving the nurse in the health facility that Profia talked about, who is dealing with snakes in the maternity ward. DHS does not talk about that. We have the youngest youthful population in the world. We have mobile technology. Can we create new systems? And I personally refuse to be held hostage by what works in the past and what we are familiar with. And I think that we have an opportunity with this disruption to create better systems that are real-time, that provide data to very many decision makers, the nurse, the district medical officer, the governor of a state, the chairman of a district, up to the Minister of Health. Real-time, responsive data. And I think we can create that. And so my appeal would be, we don't want for people to die and we don't know, but we also don't need to replicate a system that was more backward-looking rather than forward-looking, and that was not responsive for the needs of decision makers at all levels.
I'll follow up again in my second question with you, particularly with regards to how your institution can support African countries. But let me go to Chido, and we're really excited that you could join us on this panel. For years, Africa's youth has been insistent that governments not have conversations on their behalf without having them in the room. Currently, there are 1.2 billion people on the African continent. The median age is 19. And in the next 25 years, Africa will have a population of 2.4 billion people. Again, the youth will constitute more than 70% of that number. How do we better prepare them, support them, and empower them to have a voice when it comes to health and development on the continent? From your experience, what is it that you'll tell us?
Thank you, Victor. I would say that we need to ensure that we engage youth across all board. So when you talk about governance, youth need to be involved. When you talk about programming, youth need to be involved. When you talk about advocacy, youth need to be involved. And we need to get to a place where we see young people as key partners and professionals, not just volunteers that are often in the sidelines of tokenism in contributing towards the Africa that we want. And therefore, it's also important that we start looking at how we're going to mentor the next generation leaders. We need to consider leadership transfer, wealth transfer. We often say that your health is your wealth. And 70% of these young people, it means that 20 years down the line from now, they will be the ones that are making the decisions about our continent. So in as much as we might have 70% in this room, which is great because I see a lot of people, but we need to go a step further and start preparing them to actually be in leadership, because often when we sit in the rooms where they're making the decisions, young people are lacking, but the future belongs to them, and they're the majority.
So as an AU envoy, what is it that you're proposing? What is it that you're pushing? What can we best do?
I would propose that we continue institutionalizing youth across all board, and especially in leadership positions. We also need to consider strategies that incorporate young people. I'll give an example within the African Union and working with my colleagues at Africa CDC. They launched a youth engagement strategy, and that's an intentional way of ensuring that young people are involved across all board. Lastly, let me talk about resources. Again, often when it comes to resources, we find that young people have very brilliant ideas and even a grassroots, and they have access to small grants. But now imagine if we come together, and when we come together, we create a hub, and within this hub, we have young people accessing funds at a higher level with bigger amounts, but also receiving the mentorship that they need and also having impact across our member states. So collaboration is also key in terms of how we're going to manage our resources as well moving forward.
Thank you very much, Chido. Catherine, I'm going to come back to you again. Anybody who's worked with the Gates Foundation knows that the Gates Foundation is very big on data-driven solutions. Well, your organization's research is actually helping to inform health policies and strategies all across the continent. So how can we ensure that African institutions lead in shaping sustainable and resilient health systems? Again, I'd like you to segue from where you left off earlier in providing us a response in this regard.
I think I'll first say that there are very many great institutions on this continent. There are great research institutions, whether it is the Amwa Hansen Institute here in Addis Ababa, whether it is the Center for Epidemiological Modeling and Analysis at the University of Nairobi, whether it is the institution led by my brother here in Mali. There are great institutions on this continent, but there are three problems. The first problem is that they're not enough. Not every country has an ARI, not every country has a Center for Vaccine Development that exists in Mali. That's the first problem. The second is that for many years, these institutions have operated in the shadows of much bigger and more dominant institutions based in the global north, which in many instances have acted as intermediaries and in some as gatekeepers. to influence, to resources, to power, to decision making. So that's the second problem. The third is that these institutions, his Center for Vaccine Development, could do more if they are given more resources, if they had more skills, if they are given the mandate to go beyond what they do, to work with governments and work with communities. So those are the three problems. So we're at a moment in time where we have two options. One is that we continue the same model of development where we don't mind too much how results are delivered. We get results, but we don't care how they're delivered. And we maintain this model of intermediaries and gatekeeping, and we still deliver results. Or that we actually shift investments to local institutions that are on the ground, that can work with governments in a consistent way, in a long-term way, in a way that is more efficient, and I would say more effective and is more sustainable. So we have an option to build institutions on the continent that will deliver results today, tomorrow, and maybe 10 years from now, at a fraction of the cost in which we've delivered results in the past. And for that to happen, the intermediaries which have been disrupted by the current goings-on in the global development sector, we need intermediaries on the continent, and that's the role our institution is playing, to be an intermediary where we can facilitate the growth of African institutions. So I'll keep on making the case for African institutions that we need to invest local and facilitate that connection between government, academia, research, and implementing agencies. And I'll just give one example about what is possible. We are leading an initiative called the Countdown to 2030. Some have called it a movement that is now in 25 countries, where we've managed to connect academic institutions with government agencies, whether it's in Ministry of Health, whether it's in Ministry of Planning, and this pairing of government and academia is crunching mountains of data. And every year, they produce reports about the progress being made in different countries, about maternal, newborn, and child health, about coverage of critical indicators, but they don't stop at national level. They tell countries, your problem is in the northern part of the country. You have an urban-rural divide. The poorest people are doing this way relative to the richest in your own country, and this is where you need to invest. If that is possible, suppose that was institutionalized, suppose that was expanded. So it's possible to actually invest in local institutions that can be meaningful partners to their governments.
Thank you very much, Catherine. I'm going to come back to Chido again. Again, we do know that you can't leave the youth behind. I'm going to try and put the feet of the Gates Foundation to the fire this morning, but not just the Gates Foundation, countries all over the continent, to ministers who are holistically responsible for change on our continent. If there was just one bold initiative that you would propose to the foundation and to government leaders watching us live right now, what would that one thing be to ensure that the youth indeed are grafted into all of our development programs? I know you shared a few things earlier. What's that one bold thing that you propose that would be ground shifting?
Thank you very much. I think I'll further elaborate on what I'd mentioned before with regards to the hub. We need to ensure that we have a one place where everyone is able to go and access funding, access resources, and also have knowledge sharing and research. We also know that, with the emerging technologies such as artificial intelligence, and now there's a nexus between artificial intelligence and public health, for example. But where do young people go to access the information and the new research to be enabled to go, out to the markets and be able to also make impact within their respective fields? So it's very key that we collectively come together as member states with our key partners, have this one key hub, an Africa Youth Development Hub, which is accessible to our young people for opportunities that they can also further expand and make impact within communities going down to grassroots. Excellent. So big data, artificial intelligence, and a massive training center. Excellent. Let me come to Professor So. Look, we live in a world that's awash with AI-driven fake news on a daily basis. It's coming out of the wazoo. It's all about myths, manipulation, and misinformation. And all of this affects our health campaigns. I'm a big believer in the 4 Ps of people, public, private, partnerships. This being the case, how can we best leverage these elements at a local level to build trust and to ensure that there is indeed
equitable access to interventions like vaccines, and that we overcome some of the misinformation, misguided information that's out there. Unfortunately, the Gates Foundation tends to get quite a bit of that, but for those of us on the ground, we know that this is one institution that's making a huge and a very significant difference on our continent. Over to you, Prof. Your take.
Thank you very much, Victor, for this really great question. Yes, you're right. Myths and miscommunication and rumors can kill. It doesn't matter how powerful this whatever operation is, it can kill it in a few seconds. Very important. What usually happens, let me give you a few examples. We usually go to communities only if we need them. Example, in 2014, during the Ebola outbreak in West Africa, we all faced and experienced huge community fatigue because we're just going in nonstop. Those were people who have never seen this many people before. If during the COVID pandemic, same thing happened. And right after those crises, they are left behind. Why do you want them to trust you? You only come to see them if there is a problem, a crisis. If they're dying, then the other thing is their myths. You cannot come in one day and say, stop delivering in these bushes, stop delivering in these cultural places. You have to stay with them. You have to discuss with them. You have to understand their direction, their culture. You have to show respect. We need to earn trust. We need to build trust by making our presence in those communities, by making more and more proximity approaches, by really telling stories, public health stories.
And trust isn't gained when we have a crisis or an emergency.
Exactly.
It's gained well before that.
Exactly.
So communication is important, engagement is important, partnership at a local level is important.
Exactly. And communication, yes, before, during, and after. It has to be maintained. Let me tell you one example. You can build community leaders. I've recently saw a woman who had 7 stillbirths consecutively in the community. She almost became some very strange person. Recently, she got pregnant. So we helped to closely monitor this pregnancy, hopefully successfully delivery. And that woman now is our champion. 2, a man who lost many women just during normal deliveries. And we helped closely monitor the last ones, and then successfully deliver, and so on and so forth. Children dying and helping to monitor them. These places are very hard to reach places, tough places, abandoned. So just build trust, take your time and do that.
Thank you very much, Professor. So with an eye on the clock, I'm going to allow our panelists to provide one final statement. But before I do, I just want to provide a caveat here. In my working relationship, in my engagement with folk at the Gates Foundation, one of the things that I've noticed is that they're always bashful about blowing their trumpet. They are, and actually a lot of their work is underreported. It's just part of their cultural DNA. But for where you sit, and from your engagement with the foundation, is there one story of a community or an individual that you could share with us that could actually inspire us concerning the work that the Gates Foundation does? And if there's one thing that you could say to the Gates Foundation and to African leaders watching us, tuned in right now, what would that one thing be? 90 seconds each. I'll start with Professor So, okay. Then I'll go to Catherine, and I'll end with Chido.
Thank you.
90 seconds each.
To the foundation, I would recommend strongly, finally, to set up a real marriage between research and public health intervention. There have been so many great studies, so many publications, but no data, very few feedback to communities, few data to action. This is now time for that. We need to move down into communities. not feet on this carpet here, on these phenomenal rooms, feet on the ground, dust. Do intervention, data to action. That will be my one. And if I have to add, I don't want to see any more children dying before they celebrate their 5th anniversary. I don't want to see women dying just for trying to give life. We have to fix our firefighting troop now. We have to fix our firefighters now. We have to make sure the smoke detectors are working now. No war. We don't prepare war with a war during the war.
Thank you very much, Prof. Data to action. Catherine, next.
What gives me hope, as we've been involved in some exercises that have actually challenged the narratives about African institutions. There are great African institutions on this continent. And every time we discover things about them, that gives me hope. And whether the rest of the world is coming with us or not, I think ultimately Africa's future depends on institutions on the continent. And my last word will be that Africa's people and institutions have a role to play, but these institutions are not going to build themselves. And we can do everything else. If we don't build institutions, we'll be here, maybe celebrating 50 years. Maybe you won't be here. But there'll be people here celebrating 50 years, and then we'll still be maybe aspiring for change. That could have been possible if only we would invest in institutions on the ground. I think Prof here has made the case. Who is this person who is going to be connecting the research with communities? It's not a scientist from somewhere, thousands of miles away. It is the scientist right next to that community. And that scientist is not going to function if there's no institution through which they can work.
Thank you very much, Catherine. Shaping the narrative and building the capacity of institutions. Chido, over to you for the last comment here.
Sure. I think my last comment is on maternal health, because I see a lot of young women are often affected by this. 2/3 of maternal deaths globally come from Africa. And I believe there's so much more we can do by working with our communities, especially those in marginalized communities and rural areas that are often affected by this. And I want to give one example actually in Southern Africa, which is an initiative in Malawi and Zambia, which is called the Community Bicycle Ambulance. And in as much as it might seem like just a simple initiative, but it's saving lives, because these bicycles go to the marginalized communities that are far away from the clinics, and they also have carts, and they're able to carry pregnant women in cases of emergencies and get them to the clinic on time. And as a result of this, avoiding maternal deaths. So we really need to do more of this. We've seen that, there are issues with young women across Africa. There are also issues to do with childhood marriages, and that is something we need to tackle. But at the same time, we also need to protect the young girls, that if they do fall pregnant at an early age, how do we ensure that they are safe when they're giving birth?
Thank you very much for that, and we're going to end on that note. But as the Deputy UN Secretary General Amina Mohammed said earlier, the world should not ask how it can help Africa, but how it can partner with Africa, a huge difference. And I make bold to say that this innovative genius has been at the core of the work of the Gates Foundation over the years, and I'd like for us, even at this point, to give the Gates Foundation a round of applause here. A lot of what they do is making a difference in the lives of millions of people on a daily basis. To our panelists who are watching online, 20,000 of them, and to those watching in viewing centers all across the country and in different parts of the world, we want to thank you this morning for joining us. Your presence also makes a huge difference. To our distinguished panelists, Chido, Professor So, and Dr. Catherine, please give them a wonderful round of applause this morning. Thank you very much for being with us.
Thank you so much to Chido. Thank you, Dr. Catherine. Thank you, Professor So. Thank you to Dr. Victor Oladokun. That was an incredibly insightful conversation. You know how to lead a conversation, Dr. Victor. Another round of applause for him, please. I'd like to extend a very warm welcome to the Deputy AU Chairperson, Her Excellency Ambassador Salma Malika Haddadi. Thank you so much for joining us, and thank you for being an inspiration. Up next, I would like to be joined by Hadis Tadesse, a fellow actor, if you didn't know. The good looks, they say it all. He is also the director of the Gates Foundation right here in Ethiopia and a representative of the African Union. The foundation's work has always been based on partnerships, and Hadis has been on the ground building those partnerships and has helped to establish the office right here in Ethiopia. Please, a warm round of applause.
Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, it is an honor for me to introduce Bill Gates, an extraordinary leader and one of the most consequential figures of our time. See, I've had the privilege of working alongside Bill for the last 18 years. Beyond the headlines, I've had the opportunity to see his compassion, his genuine care, and how he loves the people of Africa. But I want to introduce Bill with a video message from someone special today, Madame Graça Machel. Madame Machel is a voice of wisdom, dignity, and enduring commitment. Her presence, particularly in this hall, carries the weight of legacy and the power of courage that Mandela embodied. She is, to many of us, a guiding light, an advocate, a stateswoman, and a mother to our beloved continent. Let's please listen from Mama Michelle.
Good morning to all. We gather today not just in a hall, but in a living monument to justice, courage, and dignity, the Nelson Mandela Hall. This space carries the echoes of a man who gave his life to the ideals of freedom, equality, and African union. It is profoundly symbolic. Mr. Gates chooses to speak from the home of the African Union, which demonstrates his commitment to take Africa to heart and keep our issues central to his work at the Gates Foundation. Now more than ever, we are called to awaken the enduring African spirit of resilience, to rise, rebuild, and reimagine our future, and act with the courage, clarity, and collective action that defines us. Madiba reminded us that leadership is defined by service, by recognizing the dignity in others, uplifting their voices, and working toward a future anchored in justice and compassion. We pay tribute to his legacy by drawing strength from his courage, conviction, and unwavering perseverance, and by stepping forward with responsibility and meaningful action to overcome the challenges of our time. We meet at a time of profound global change, and we are in a moment of crisis where we risk losing gains made in health outcomes, maternal and child mortality, in scientific research, and on the ever important focus on women's reproductive health. Mr. Gates' long-standing partnership with Africa reflects a deep understanding of these challenges and a respect for African leadership, ideas, and innovation. We are counting on Mr. Gates' steadfast commitment to continue walk this path of a transformation along us. Given the immense weight of his name, his far-reaching influence, and his unparalleled networks, we trust he will mobilize others with significant means to stand with us and to help usher any new and innovative partnerships capable of confronting the grave challenges that lie ahead. Africa's path forward must be forged in solidarity across nations, sectors, and generations. No one actor, no one government, no one philanthropist can do it alone. Firmly believe the question before us is not others can do for Africa, but what we as Africans will choose to do with the power, talent, and vision already within us. African leaders, private sector, and civil society, as well as citizens alike, know that we must leverage all the resources at our disposal to take the destiny of our people into our own hands. It is my honor to welcome Bill, my friend and a friend of Africa, a man whose journey was shaped in part by the example of Madiba, and who has chosen to work alongside our continent in pursuit of a better future. He joins us today not only in reflection, but to offer a bold vision for the new 20 years anchored in enduring belief in Africa's promise. Bill, you're welcome.
Ladies and gentlemen, Bill Gates.
Well, thank you and good morning. It's fantastic to see the large group here today, and I really appreciate the comments that Grasa made. She's been a great leader and an incredible partner who I was privileged to work with. I also got to work with President Mandela, who's, of course, one of the most inspirational people ever. Throughout his life, he showed incredible courage. And now, Africa's at a time where they're looking for the next generation of leaders that will provide the great examples like he did. Today, I'm going to talk about the progress that has been made, my optimism for the future, and some of the specific things that we need to do, as well as my commitment to help with the challenges that Africa's taking on. Mostly, I like to look forward, look at the new science, look at the progress that can be made. But this year in particular, I find myself looking back on what's been done. This year is the 50th anniversary of Microsoft, the company I founded and which provides the fortune that I'm now giving away. It's the 25th year of the Gates Foundation, and also later this year, I'll celebrate my 70th birthday. You see here a picture from back in 1993, which was one of my first visits to Africa. And it was a fantastic trip, made a real impression on me, and made me commit to learn more and to understand the history, the amazing history here. It was during the 1990s that I was already thinking about what I would do giving back the wealth created by the success of Microsoft to society. And my mom often quoted the biblical statement, "To whom much has been given, much as expected. My parents, who you see here, my dad and mom, shaped my values. They set a great example. They were incredible volunteers, always believed in giving, and they really taught me the belief that all lives have equal value. This picture shows them here with Warren Buffett, who, other than my parents, is probably the person who's influenced me the most. He's also unbelievably generous, and he's also given a lot to Africa, both through his gifts to the Gates Foundation and the incredible generosity of his children's foundation. The other picture as a favorite, it's when my dad made a trip to South Africa at a time when HIV was not being acknowledged as a challenge throughout the world. There was a lot of denial, incredible stigma, and so it was very brave of President Nelson Mandela, together with Jimmy Carter and my dad, to be holding some babies who'd been infected with HIV here in Soweto in 2002. During the 1990s, I was, moving on beyond just thinking about computers, which had been my great obsession in my teens and 20s, and thinking about the world at large, what was going on with health and science and education. And an article I saw by Nick Kristof in 1997 taught me about the number of kids who are dying of diarrhea, and taught me that it was mostly kids in the lower income countries. And I was stunned to find out that there actually was a vaccine to treat the main cause of diarrhea, rotavirus, but it was so expensive, it was not available to all the children of the world, and nothing had been done to reduce the cost and raise the money to make that available. And so, I took that article from Nick and I sent it to my dad saying, I think this is an area we should learn more about and maybe we can help out. And so child survival and child thriving became the primary focus of the Gates Foundation. And of course, we often talk about millions of deaths and how tragic that is, but that can sometimes take away from the deep emotional connection we feel with a single death. And so I've got a short clip here that talks about actual individual deaths and reminds us this is all the work of both the heart and the head.
Baby Lina. Mommy.
A very personal experience I had was being in South Africa, and I was meeting with the parents of the children who had just died. And we were asking those parents to volunteer to have their child undergo what we had created, a simple procedure called a minimal invasive autopsy to understand what the child had died of. And I asked the mother, why were they willing to volunteer? And she said that they would do anything to make sure that others didn't have to go through what they were going through. And so they wanted to contribute to that. We can see that most of these under 5 deaths are taking place in lower income countries. And so this is incredibly unjust. You know, a child born in many parts of Africa has 50 times the chance of dying before the age of 5 than children in other countries. And so from its very beginning, starting in the year 2000, the foundation has learned from our partners in Africa. We've learned about health, agriculture, education. And we've talked about how can we bring innovation to bear on these problems. Some of them very scientific, you know, creating new vaccines for malaria, HIV, and tuberculosis. Some of it's very basic, like how do you organize the primary healthcare system, to engage the citizens and convince them of what kind of health practices will work the best. I've always been inspired by the hard work, you know, even in places with very limited resources, the kind of field work to get solutions out, even in the most remote rural areas, has been incredible. Our foundation has an increasing commitment to Africa. Our first African office was here in Ethiopia about 13 years ago. Now we have offices also in South Africa, Nigeria, Kenya, and Senegal. And that's a great way for us to strengthen partnerships. Looking back on this last 25 years, we have seen incredible progress. The progress in global health is not well known, and yet I consider it one of the greatest things that humanity has done. The reduction in under 5 deaths from just under 10 million to now well under 5 million during these 25 years is really mind-blowing. It is more than twice as fast in reduction of deaths than in any period in history. And there's some very specific things that were done to get this result. Early in the foundation's history, we were a founder called Gavi that was there to help buy vaccines. We spent the money to make sure the cost of that diarrheal rotavirus vaccine went down from $30 to under $2. And leaders in countries made sure that those new vaccines got adopted and looked into their primary healthcare system to see, okay, what percentage of the children were being reached and what should they do to get that up towards 100%. There are many exemplars in this work, including Ethiopia. For sub-Saharan Africa as a whole, deaths have been cut in a third, and Ethiopia has done even better than that, achieving a cut of more than half. So we've gone from about 400,000 now down to 183,000. How did this happen? Well, the government made healthcare, and in particular, primary healthcare, a priority by creating the idea of health posts and growing those from about 1,000 in 2005 to more than 15,000 today. They also used data to track the supplies and make sure the vaccines were getting out. They hired an incredible cohort of these health extension workers. And I want to recognize the amazing health extension workers who are here today. Your work has saved lives, and I have enormous respect for the great work you do. Thank you. Yeah, please stand. Another area that was a global challenge, but a particular challenge in Africa was the spread of HIV. The deaths from HIV peaked soon after the turn of the century and have now fallen from the peak by 70%. Again, this was achieved through a partnership. In the early years of the foundation, right after helping to create GOV, we helped create the Global Fund. and it pools money, Gates Foundation and rich countries to help countries, including those in Africa, fight 3 diseases: HIV, tuberculosis, and malaria. And so it's another great example of solidarity. And the person who really got the word out to help this come together in the great way it did was Kofi Annan, who exercised great moral leadership as Secretary General of the United Nations. Again, there are countries that showed the way. In Zimbabwe, for example, deaths from HIV fell by over 80%. They had, at the peak, one of the largest epidemics, but they took it very, very seriously. And now they've achieved having 95% of everyone who has HIV know their status. 95% of those people are on treatment, and 95% have full viral suppression. And that's actually the best of all countries in the world to achieve all 3 of those goals. And that means that the disease numbers will continue to go down. Now, the Gates Foundation is funding lots of new tools for all of these diseases. For example, in the case of HIV, we now have a shot that if someone gets that shot, they're protected for the next 6 months. So getting that shot twice a year will protect you for the entire year. And so we'll be rolling that out over the next year. Malaria, of course, is another big challenge, particularly in Africa. And we haven't made as much progress as we have on HIV. We always have setbacks. The parasite develops to be drug resistance. The mosquitoes develop to be insecticide resistant, so the bed nets, and the spraying doesn't have as much effect. And so it's tough. We need to keep innovating. In bed nets, we now have dual insecticide nets. They started out being a lot more expensive, but we've been able to drive the price of those down to the same price, which is under $5. Mozambique has done particularly great work in cutting malaria deaths. And a lot of that is day-to-day data gathering, diagnosing the patients, creating maps, using the resources very effectively. Every time you treat a patient and clear their malaria, that reduces the number of infections that take place for other people. Here, there's an even more exciting tools pipeline, including new ways of killing mosquitoes or making them unable to carry the malaria parasite. And so as our partners here in Africa, a lot of African scientists are testing and refining those tools and getting them ready for broad spread rollout, I believe there's a real possibility over the next 20 years to completely eradicate malaria. And that would be a huge achievement. The disease that we're actively in the throes of hopefully the last years of eradication is polio. This effort started in 1988, well before there was a Gates Foundation. It was in 1996 that President Mandela and the organization that would become the AU launched the Kick Polio Out of Africa campaign. The number of cases has come down. Worldwide, in 1995, we had 60,000. Now we're under 1,000. Polio looked very difficult to get rid of in Nigeria, and it was only through great leadership of people like Dr. Mohamed Pate, who's now the Minister of Health there, that this was successful. I partnered with generous leaders like Aliko Dangote to work with the traditional and religious leaders throughout the country, but particularly in the north, to get the word out about the importance of the polio vaccine. The main type of polio virus was completely eliminated from all of Africa in 2016, including in Nigeria, where it had looked like we might not succeed. We still have a variant of polio that's circulating, and so now we have to take all the things we did before and double down and get rid of this variant to have that job be fully completed. Although the Gates Foundation does most of its work in health with new tools and helping pilot delivery programs, we also do a great deal of work in agriculture. And when we first got started, I didn't understand how important agriculture is. It's the backbone of the economy. It's also key to helping kids be fully nourished. That makes a big difference. And giving those farmers all the information and tools they need is a key goal for us. You know, if they had the best weather data, pricing data, information about the best seeds to use, if the seeds were improved a great deal, if they could economically get fertilizer and the best fertilizer exactly matched to the needs of their soils, we would have great productivity increases. In fact, we're very committed to make that happen. The goal is to have Africa go from being a net food importer to being a significant net food exporter, even in the face of population growth and climate change. We know this is achievable. One great example that's already made a huge difference is in poultry. 10 years ago, we partnered with African partners to get a fantastic chicken, much bigger, lays more eggs, bigger eggs, far healthier, here into Africa. And thanks to many partners, including here in Ethiopia, Midrock Investment Group, across the continent, over 140 million of these birds have been gotten out into rural communities, and we can grow that even further. So innovation is part of the solution. The foundation works in a lot of other important areas. I won't be able to touch on them all. You know, one is what we call digital public infrastructure. That's having each government have an identity scheme that works well, being able to transact and save very easily from your mobile phone. So far, we have half the countries in Africa implementing those systems, and we think it'll spread eventually to all of the different countries. So not only do you domestically have instant payment, but even in terms of integrating the African economies, these digital payments make it easy to work across borders. Another important area that we've made progress is in neglected tropical diseases. And 23 countries in Africa have eliminated at least one of these diseases. For example, Togo became the first country in the world to eliminate 4 NTDs as public health problems by doing a great job of getting the Mass Drug Administration medicines out to all of their people. Likewise, TB, tuberculosis, is a big area. We have a trial taking place in many countries of a new vaccine, and our partners, our scientific partners in South Africa, have played an absolutely central role in advancing that work. Well, why am I optimistic? Well, I am a technologist at heart. You know, I love backing scientists with great new ideas. And the latest technology that you're all hearing about is artificial intelligence. And I can say to you that this will be important. It's an incredible opportunity. It brings challenges with it, but as we drive it forward, it will make a huge difference in health, education, and agriculture. And now I'm seeing young people in Africa embracing this and thinking about how it applies to the problems that they want to solve. So in the same way that Africa largely skipped traditional banking and traditional telecommunications, now you have a chance as you build your next generation healthcare system to think about how AI is built into that. As you empower your farmers to make sure that an AI can advise giving better information to even the farmer with the smallest land holding, better advice than even a farmer in a rich country is getting today. Already, we're seeing good examples of this. We're using the AI ultrasound as a very cheap device that with an AI interpretation, is there an ultrasound here? Oh yeah, here it is, hiding right there. So this device here now is an ultrasound. It's not a big, expensive box. You plug this into your cell phone, and running on that phone will be an AI algorithm so that early in a pregnancy, the software will tell you, is this going to be a difficult delivery? And so if so, you can make the effort to get to a place that can do a C-section. And for over 90% of pregnancies, it will say this will be a normal delivery, and so you don't have to go to that trouble. And that's just one of many areas where AI is now finally stepping in and helping provide great health services. Rwanda's one place where this is being pioneered, and as that works, we'll roll it out throughout the continent. And so the Gates Foundation wants to find the best AI thinkers, back them, and make sure that AI is not one of these technologies that is mostly in the rich countries and you have to wait 10 or 20 years before it gets rolled out. In fact, you could say that if equity were served, that it should roll out here first, because the need for more medical capacity and educational capacity, agricultural information, is probably stronger here than anywhere else in the world. So we can work together to make that happen. Now, we're sitting here at a time actually of a significant crisis in part of the system where there's been partnership between countries. A lot of cuts are being made in foreign aid programs. Some of those cuts are being made so abruptly that there's complete interruptions in trials, or medicines are still sitting in warehouses and not available. And these cuts are something that I think are a huge mistake. In fact, I'll be as strong a voice as I can to get as much of that restored as possible. It's coming also at a time when the fiscal indebtedness of many countries has them paying out more in interest than they are on things like health and education. And so we do see that in these next several years, for the first time in 25 years, the number of children who die will go up instead of going down. Now, we should all feel a sense of anger about that, but we should also make sure that we're doing the best we can, not only to make the case, but to use innovation, to use prioritization to make sure that we get back to reducing deaths as soon as possible. As Gracia said, it's time for Africans to leverage all the resources at their disposals and take the destiny of their people into their own hands. And we already see a lot of steps being taken. Nigeria, Tanzania, Malawi, all shifting budget priorities to make sure that basic primary health care, basic medicine treatments are not cut off as much as these aid cuts would otherwise generate. We need to prioritize well. We need to work together. And I do believe we will get back to good progress. Part of this is prioritizing primary health care. A primary health care system doesn't have to be expensive. It needs to be well-staffed, well-run. It needs to use data. Zambia here is a fantastic example. Even though there's been all sorts of financial challenges, their child mortality rate has gone down very quickly, And part of that is that they both prioritize primary health care and they run the workforce. They train them, they make sure they're there, so the kids are getting the vaccines, and that's what's resulted in that reduction in mortality. My commitment is to be a partner through the Gates Foundation. I recently made a commitment that my wealth will be given away over the next 20 years. And so you can see, I'm extremely lucky. My wealth has gotten to a very high level here. And now by accelerating my giving, I will have the Gates Foundation take all of those resources. And in fact, one thing that I haven't said publicly before is that, as we think about the priorities and the great partnerships we have, the majority of that funding will be spent on helping you address challenges here in Africa. The goals here are pretty basic. They really speak to our values. Mothers should survive delivery. Babies should survive past their 5th birthday. Kids should be well nourished. Many of these infectious diseases should go away, and the rest within 20 years should be at a very low level. And by unleashing the human potential through health, through education, every country in Africa should be on a path to prosperity. And that path is an exciting thing to be part of creating that. And so that's how I intend to focus all of my work for the rest of my life, because there's nothing more important. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, perhaps an even louder African round of applause for Mr. Bill Gates, please. Thank you so very much.
Thank you.
Bill, if I can invite you to join me here. Thank you so very much, ladies and gentlemen. As I take my seat for the fireside chat, allow me to also welcome the Regional Director for Africa at the Gates Foundation, Dr. Polan Basinga. Let's give him a round of applause, please. Another special welcome to everybody who joins us online for this conversation. Thank you for making the time to connect, and thank you for claiming your share of voice today. My name is Nozipho Shabalala, and what an absolute privilege it is to be serving you as the moderator of this conversation. Gentlemen, we have very limited time, so I'm going to get straight into it. Bill, you talk about having traveled the continent for decades, as early as 1993, and I can imagine that in that time, you have met all sorts of leaders, from traditional and religious leaders that you mentioned, to presidents, to health ministers and health caregivers and innovators. The question I want to bring to you is this: is there a moment or a story that you carry with you that has shaped how you think about partnership, but more importantly, how the foundation then shows up as a good partner?
Well,
let me see if you can have my one.
Okay. Yeah, so the foundation, hopefully is well aware that we don't understand the on-the-ground challenges, and that all we can do is, facilitate as a partner. And so, going out into villages and sitting with women's groups and hearing them talk, going into a ward during the malaria season where you see all those kids there, knowing that a lot of those kids won't survive, and then meeting with partners. We are, our partners here in Africa, not just the governments, but both for-profit and nonprofit groups work with are building up their capacity. And that's why it was so much fun today to talk about the exemplars in Africa.
Yeah.
If we took the best practices in every country, tax collection, fiscal management, prioritizing primary health care, managing that workforce well, having the supply chain, the data systems, if we took the best practices throughout the continent and adopted them broadly, we wouldn't even need 20 years to get countries to great health and self-sufficiency. And there's only a few things we bring uniquely. We bring our resources with the long-term view and our scientific understanding, and taking science and saying, not only making something cool, but making it so cheap, so easy to deliver that even in the most remote rural location. And so many times we'll come up with something, we'll say, hey, this is really good. It won't actually fit. The response is not very strong. When we first said, let's do normal autopsies, we were told, no, that won't happen. It was this thing called the minimally invasive autopsy that allowed us now to gather data and really understand, okay, what's left to be solved in terms of child survival.
So, Bill, as you respond, I'm hearing you reinforce the importance of understanding the context and understanding the culture. Paulana, I want to add another C. Bill spoke about the commitment, a 20-year commitment to Africa, and we heard all together for the first time how a lot of that is, in terms of the funds and resources, is going to be allocated to Africa. The question I want to bring to you, Paulana, is if we just take a step back, because the bigger picture matters a lot on the continent right now. The timing of this commitment happens at a time of crisis. And there's a two-pronged question I want to land with you, Paulana. One, a sobering response on what does this mean long-term for Africa? But maybe to tap back to Mama Gracia Machal's words, how do we make this crisis count?
Thank you very much, Nozi. And it's just a huge privilege to be here, to be sitting in this stage. I'm so humbled as an African sitting with Bill in this amazing hall and speaking to the continent. It's an amazing moment for all of us. I think, Bill, I've been thinking a lot about this moment, even before the crisis, as he think about his giving. And someone quite special to us who has been advising Bill as well summarized it for the All Foundation staff pretty well. Stripe Masihiwa, who is an African leader in philanthropy himself. He looked at us, all the more than 2,000 foundation employees, and said, Bill Gates has done his part.
Yep.
Now it's your time to do your part. And then today I'm asking our partners and government and grantees, it's our time to do our part, because this is a critical moment for development in Africa. For the next 20 years, Africa will be in a much better place than it is today. Yes, the next year will be a little bit challenging, given the challenge in ODA, rising, debt repayment, etc. But in Africa, we make it. Africa will be much better. But it's how we use this crisis, how we take opportunity of this huge generosity by Bill to giving away $200 billion over the next 20 years. And then the majority of it will be spent here in Africa. And then he gave us a very concrete task. He's a very strategic philanthropist. He thinks quite hard about his money, and he counts. He said we need to decrease under 5 mortality significantly. We don't want to see African mothers dying, and we need to decrease the burden of infectious diseases. Let polio go. Let malaria decrease. Someone asked Bill, what will be your legacy? And he said, no, I don't want my legacy. I just want the kids who will come after us. When they ask them about malaria, they will say, what is that?
Never heard of it.
They'll have to explain that. So that is a huge legacy.
Yeah.
Then now, for the Gates Foundation in Africa, this is a critical moment for us to regroup, to think, to say, how are we going to actually deploy the Gates Foundation comparative advantage?
Yeah.
You know, as the Africa director of the foundation, I get a lot of emails, a lot of requests. I know many people will be now calculating 200 billion divided by countries, how much my grant
Everybody gets a piece.
Exactly, but it should not work like that, right? So there is a huge difference between charity and philanthropy.
Got you.
Because, look, we are all philanthropists in Africa. We all give money. We all send 2 or 3 or 5 children to school, right? But when you do philanthropy at the size what Gates is doing, you really need to think big. You know, he's counting 2.6 million kids die in Africa every year. He wants to drive that number down. He has invested a lot with our partners and other philanthropists, other donors, to actually estimate where are those kids dying, why are they dying, from what causes, and then what can you do to drive that mortality down?
Yeah.
Then our investment is actually, as the Gates Foundation, to really think about how do we deploy what we know to do best, is innovation. It's investment in places that either the private sector or the government. No private sector will spend millions of dollars trying to find the vaccine of TB. It will not sell. But the Gates Foundation will put money, but then you can see that the bulk of our investment will continue to be almost 50% of it on R&D and innovation so that we bring that. But now, as our panelists did here, is how do we work with African organizations that actually understand the field very well to accelerate the implementation of those so that we can decrease unemployment mortality, increase agriculture productivity. You know, biotechnology is showing a lot of progress, etc. Now it's up to us to actually accelerate the adoption and the scale and the sustainability so that in 20 years, we don't even need philanthropy because Africa will be self-sustained. That's the challenge we have.
Paul, so that posture of partnership that's already entrenched in how the foundation works becomes even more critically important over the next 20 years as we think about how do we reimagine the why so that the institutions have the capacity to really run with the work. But you've mentioned the word count a number of times. Bill, there are a number of people in this room and online whose primary job is to count the dollars in the fiscal purse. And they have the responsibility of balancing priorities for their countries. And on a number of times in this conversation, you've mentioned the importance of investing in primary healthcare. Why primary healthcare is the key investment, one, but two, can you say a little bit about its catalytic effect on other social and economic outcomes for economies and governments broadly?
Yeah, so, you know, what is Africa's greatest asset? You know, by far it's the people. And whenever I show people outside of Africa the incredible shift of the portion of the children being born in the world that are going to be in Africa, they're always like, wow, I guess we really do need to tap into that because, you know, young people are where you grow markets and where you get new ideas. And so with primary health care, what we've learned is that helping the mother be healthy and have great nutrition before she gets pregnant, while she's pregnant, and then the child in those first 4 years makes all the difference. One burden that health gives that's a little harder to be numeric about is that even the kids who survive, many of them have been damaged because of malnourishment. And so their ability to achieve their mental or physical potential is hugely damaged. It's about 40% of the kids in sub-Saharan Africa have these huge health deficits that affect them and their family and their country. And so to make that asset, there's a term demographic dividend that, you know, when you have a youth bulge, that's kind of good because you have less people on pensions and more people in the workforce. But that all presupposes that the health and education of those children was strong enough that they are doing great work. And so in no way do I play down the importance of education and other things, but for us, we picked health as the top priority. And I would say without that, you can't get to where you want to go. And if you fix a kid's nutrition when they're 5 or 6, it's too late. You really need to get there at these early stages. We have a lot of tools that are very cheap that are already available, and we're doing more to understand these malnourishment and how to solve that, because in a way you could put that even above malaria or any other disease as the worst thing that healthcare has to solve.
Paul, and I want to build on that. And Bill, thank you very much for that, for really underscoring the significance and the impact of investing in primary healthcare. And again, I'm bringing into this conversation, Palan, those policymakers that sit with that responsibility of making those trade-offs. How does the conversation land? Bill's chuckling on the side. We're going to, and I'm keen to hear what you've got to say on this, Palan. How does that conversation land as countries are saying, well, what about education, or what about jobs, and what about defense? And the range is, the list is absolutely long. How do we make a compelling case that this one investment really has the potential to make sure that we don't have a youth bomb, but we have a youth boom?
Yeah, for anyone who has worked in government, you understand the challenge that they have. I see some ministers in the room. I see the challenge that they have. When you look at everything that Bill has been talking about, the majority of those interventions actually get to people through the primary healthcare system. 90% of services, either prevention, either prenatal care, delivery, etc., happens actually in either health posts or health centers, or reached by community health workers or volunteers in their catchment areas that they reach people. So when you think about decreasing your maternal mortality and infant mortality, you really need to have a very strong and functioning and well-financed primary health care. And it costs close to $100 per year per person to actually do that. And there is no one, no philanthropy, no private donor that can do that on behalf of the government, because you need to pay people, you need to buy commodities, you need to do the outreach, you need to provide all those funding, right? So it's so critical for government to actually prioritize the primary health care. In countries that have done that, country like Senegal, country like Rwanda, country like Kenya, etc., you see the coverage of routine immunization at 97, 96%. And in countries where primary health care is not prioritized,
you see
the inverse, like 20% of kids, there are increased number of what we call zero-dose kids. That means a kid who's 5 years never got any vaccine. So it's instrumental to invest in that. But I agree that education is also critical.
Sure.
And government need actually to think critically about how to increase taxes, to use effectively, to cut and processes to actually put the money where the evidence.
So we've got less than 5 minutes, and I want to sneak in a cheeky question. First to you, Palan, first. I would imagine, having seen the amount of misinformation that sometimes happens on the continent, the narrative about the role of the foundation on the continent, the work on the foundation, that you have a story of 3 about how this actually impacts your work. But I suppose you could maybe share with us a conception that we could dispel in this very moment. But secondly, how do the conceptions go on to shape and color and impact the work on the ground?
Wow. So, a lot. As someone who works in Africa, and, probably I'll share something personal here. Bill and even my family that are probably following, they don't know. I grew up in exile in the DRC. I'm from Rwanda. My parents left Rwanda many years ago, so I grew up in DRC, in a place called Bunia in Ituri. And we lived in, moving house to house and barely surviving every day. And I lost both of my parents there, my mom and my dad. And they had a baby. So today, Bill, I cried when I saw the video you showed, because the image of my younger brother called Eve, He died, he was 3 or 4, I remember, just after, like few weeks after. So he's counted among the 5 million people, kids who died in the 1990s. Then, the genocide ended in Rwanda. I was able to go back, and incredible support from the government of Rwanda. I was able to go to school, become a medical doctor, got opportunity to go to the US, did my MPH and did my PhD, and then went back to Rwanda to actually help rebuild the government, systems, etc. And then in 2012, I got a call from Stefano Bertozzi, who used to be your director of HIV. At that time, Stefano was trying to bring more Africans. There were, apart from Hadis, there were maybe 5 Africans working there for the foundation. The first 12 years of the foundation, Bill and Melinda wanted actually to create global public good, Gavi Global Fund, and say, look, we are not going to go in Africa and try to make it happen. We will create global public good, and then the world will take it up.
Yeah.
But it didn't happen. So 2012, they started really thinking about how to, build more presence here. Bill showed you how we have now all close to 200 people here, 5 offices. When I joined, I was exactly the same as the people in those rural communities who don't understand why an American white man from Seattle will care about kids dying in my rural village. Sure. Why? Why does he want? Maybe he wants to make money. Mm-hmm. This is, when I went there, I was asking myself that question. I started looking at the slide, meetings, etc. I got to work with him for the past 13 years. And sometimes when I meet with him, and then I go meet with our own leaders in the rural, I'm like, my goodness, Bill is caring more about the kids. He knows more about the data than you. We should solve that. So, no interest at all.
That definitely deserves a round of applause.
As someone who sits in the leadership, I see the emails. He was in Ethiopia. I'm going to embarrass him a little bit. Last night, he sent a report, and then another email this morning. He was learning about Ethiopia, about philanthropy in Africa. He was like, tell me, who else is funding philanthropy in Africa? So he's constantly learning and trying to see how he'll solve the problem. So, it's normal. People, where I was in a rural DRC, I will be suspicious as well, but we all collectively need to do a much better job to explain why, because he has shown it that he's going to spend all his money here, so there is no interest. If I was your son, I would ask, why are you not asking, are you leaving some money for me? But you're going to give it away. But yeah, so that's the challenge we have. We need to tell why, and then we got it today.
Yeah.
And it's a big responsibility for all of us to make it count and really decrease underprivileged mortality.
And we walk away as champions, is what I'm hearing you say, Polan, champions of the truth and of sharing the good work. We've run out of time, Bill, but I just want to give you an opportunity to close. I want to tap into the spirit of Utatu Mandela. I want to bring Mama Mashal's words back into the room. I want to pay homage to this place where African leaders come to restore their energy and to revive themselves as they go out to build and work for the continent. What message do you have for them, Bill, as they remain committed to a sustainable Africa?
Well, one message is we want to help them achieve their goals. Sometimes when you have an election, the issue of who will run the primary healthcare system the best is not the top of the voters' minds. I wish democracy, even in my country, was a little bit more focused on these almost technocratic issues of running a great health system or running a great education system. I think there's a lot of great people out there in the field. And so my message to them is be curious. Who in Africa is doing a better job? You won't go out, it's not like the private sector. You won't go out of business if another country is doing a better job. But you should have that top of mind, and you've got to know when I come to see you, I'm going to say, hey, here's a country who has better vaccine coverage than you do, or whatever you're not doing. I might mention some things you're doing well, but I'll mostly dwell on, hey, here's where you should do some other things. So, with the innovation pipeline, despite this current crisis, if we learn from each other, we can achieve these goals.
If we learn from each other, we can achieve these goals. Let's be curious about the gap and be clear about what we are holding each other accountable to. Bill, in Africa, there are people we call baobabs. And that's because their work is life-giving and it's long-lasting. Thank you for being the baobabs of our time. Ladies and gentlemen, Bill Gates and Dr. Poland Basinga. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Another round of applause to Nozipho, to Poland, to Bill Gates. Thank you so very much for that incredible reminder and that amazing announcement. Thank you, Mr. Gates. 70%. I know that I will be live and I will see the summit of this Gates Foundation. So thank you. Thank you for inspiring us. And thank you to this incredible continent that continues to rise on its own and lean on incredible partnerships to help it continue to summit these mountains. The next speaker, if you will allow me, please, help me welcome to the stage to tell us more on how the African leaders can be able to continue to partner for the next 25 years. She is the Deputy Chairperson of the African Union Commission, Her Excellency, Ambassador Salma Malika Haddadi. Thank you.
Our esteemed guest of honor, Mr. Bill Gates, Excellencies, esteemed ministers and high representatives of the host country, Ethiopia, representatives of the African Union member states, and representatives of our regional economic communities, members of the diplomatic corps, distinguished leadership of the Gates Foundation here with us today, distinguished guests and panelists, esteemed partners, ladies and gentlemen, and youth present with us today. It is fitting that today's celebration takes place within the walls of a venue that bears the name of one of Africa's most visionary sons and leaders, whose once reminded us that, I quote, "Freedom is meaningless if people cannot put food in their stomachs, if they cannot have shelter, if illiteracy and disease continue to dog them," end of quote. These words by Nelson Mandela remain as relevant today than ever, serving as a powerful reminder that the aspirations of our 1.5 billion people must be matched by tangible progress in their daily lives. This vision is echoed in our Agenda 2063, which continues to guide the priorities of the African Union system. It underscores the need for our collective sustained commitment to ensure food sovereignty and climate resilience, to strengthen health systems and pandemic preparedness, to empower our youth through education and innovation, and to fully recognize and support the essential contribution of women to the continent's development. We understand that these trials, though significant, are also moments that compel us to act boldly and think differently, moments that open the door to new possibilities. The possibility of supporting and creating opportunities to empower our youthful population to truly become a dynamic engine of development. The possibility of confronting health challenges by building a stronger pharmaceutical sector and indeed manufacturing base within Africa. The possibility of harnessing the climate transition to reinforce our long-standing commitment to food sovereignty while unlocking new pathways for inclusive and sustainable development. We also recognize that Africa today possesses significant influence, power that must be deployed thoughtfully to advance our priorities, particularly through the United Nations and the G20. The Gates Foundation's choice of African Union precinct to commemorate its 25th year is, I trust, an indication of an important partner's commitment to continue the journey towards delivering concrete results together. Fostering transformational partnership is indeed an important lever in our implementation agenda. In this respect, I would like to acknowledge and convey, on behalf of the African Union Commission leadership and the entire African Union system, our appreciation for the continued commitment and tireless engagement of the Foundation on key priorities for the continent. I want to affirm the commitment of the African Union Commission chairpersons as a team, Mr. Bill Gates, in April 2025, and few moments this morning ago, to work together to deliver sustainable solutions to health, financing, the operationalization of the Africa Medicines Agency, and most importantly, support vaccine production sovereignty to align with Africa's health priorities. As your engagement with the Union expands beyond the health sector, let us also be co-creators of solutions, in line with the priorities we have articulated to address challenges such as climate resilience and technological innovation. To our esteemed partner, Mr. Bill Gates, on behalf of the African Union family, I want to congratulate you and the entire team of the Gates Foundation on this quarter-century milestone. Your statement delivered a few minutes ago and the data provided are indeed telling. Thank you for standing with Africa, not only through your resource contribution, but more importantly, through your unwavering commitment to listening, learning, and believing in what this continent can achieve. I hope that you leave today's discussion inspired to continue contributing to Africa's future. As you look ahead to the next 2 decades, I want to leave you with this thought. By 2045, the average African will be 24 or 23 years of age. The Foundation has a rare opportunity to help shape the future of an entire generation whose progress and potential, including to achieve the targets of Agenda 2063, can stand the Foundation's most enduring legacy. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Your Excellency. May I ask that you please stay on the stage? Thank you so much. Another round of applause, please. Thank you. May I ask that all our speakers please join me on stage? I think today's a reminder of not only the path that we've already taken, but the path that we have to look ahead. Thank you, Hadis. Thank you for the work that you do as the regional director right here in Ethiopia. Thank you, Mr. Gates. Thank you, Chido. Thank you, Nozipo. Thank you, Palan, for heading the Africa team. Thank you, Dr. Catherine. Thank you, Professor So. Perhaps today's insights and sentiments have proven to say that it is data-driven. There's so much progress that we have that lays ahead of us. But most importantly, Africa for Africa. Can I get a round of applause for that? As I said earlier on, this is a full circle moment for me. 24 years ago, I never thought that I'd be able to say this, that not only a child's life was saved through the antiretroviral pills, the support from this very foundation, but 2 lives were impacted, mine included. That I get to stand here, that at 14 years old, I was getting training program, Mr. Gates, on how to administer ARV pills to an infant. By the age of 6, 7, she was undetectable. Her CD4 count had gone strong. And today I get to look back and say that I can stand on this stage to celebrate the 25 years of this incredible foundation. And most importantly, to leave every single one of you with the seed to say, let us go forth. Much has been done, but there's work to do. If you are willing to roll up your sleeves and make sure that we plow into this continent, then I'm ready to do the work with you. Let us stop searching for greener pastures. Let us water these very pastures. Is that okay? Thank you to the 20,000 people that have joined us here today virtually. Thank you for sticking through with us. And thank you so much to everyone who has hosted a watch party. Thank you so much for the sentiments, and thank you for the work that you continue to do. We'll see you in 20 years' time.